For the cheapest coins with fast delivery and quick customer support, check out my sponsor, Red Zone Coins, and use code SWIFT at checkout for 20% off.
Salsa family, and today I'm coming back at you guys with another video on the channel, and in today's video, we're going to be tier ranking the 2020 NFL quarterbacks. I decided to switch it up a little bit today and post something non-Madden related, just because, to be honest, I haven't been playing a bunch of Madden recently. I'm kind of just waiting for Madden 21 to come out, so I did decide to make a 2020 NFL quarterback tier list today. If you guys do enjoy this style of content and you want to see a little bit more of it in the next month, leave a like down below. I'll do one for wide receivers, running backs, maybe teams as well. So leave a like if you want to see that, and if you disagree with my opinions, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of you guys sparking some debate in the comment section, so leave a comment down below. I'll probably read and reply to most of them, and I'm sure you guys can have some good arguments down there as well. But without further ado, let's hop into these rankings. As you guys can see, I have already started it off by putting Drew in the GOAT status, and if you want to see why that's the case, I'll play a video right here, and then we'll get into the rankings. So yeah, as you guys did just see, Drew Brees is the only quarterback out of all of these that I have first-hand experience catching a pass from, and I can tell you that pass was absolutely crispy. We're putting him in the GOAT status. Obviously, I'm a huge Saints fan as well, so I just had to throw him in there. So let's start this off with the first quarterback right here, and that is going to be Josh Allen. And I think Josh Allen is someone that can actually very easily get up into like the borderline elite section in a couple of years, but for right now, I'm going to put him in the unknown sector. I could easily see him becoming borderline elite and actually becoming a very, very good quarterback, but he has only been in the league for a couple of years, so it is a little bit too early to tell. Now, I do think Baker Mayfield is going to be in a similar category, although I actually can't see Baker being someone like a borderline elite quarterback, just because he does seem to make too many mistakes. So I think Baker could get up to like a great QB section, but for now, just like Josh Allen, I'm going to slot both of them in the unknown section. Now, next up is going to be Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger has had an incredible career, but I would say he's kind of starting to get to the decline of his career. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in great heading into the 2020 season. Although he definitely was an elite quarterback at some point in his career, I'm putting him in great heading into the 2020 season. And of course, these rankings are for how well I think these QBs are going to play in 2020. Now, next up, we have Cam Newton. Cam Newton is a very interesting QB, but from first-hand experience, I honestly saw him miss too many passes in the last couple of years. As a Saints fan, I watch Cam play twice a year against my team, and he honestly misses just far too many passes. So for that reason, I'm putting him in an average. I know he could easily become elite and actually just totally dominate the league, but just from what I've seen the last couple of years, I do have to put him in average because he honestly just misses way too many crucial passes. So that's why I'm putting him in average. Now, Derek Carr is someone who I'd consider putting in the below average section, but I am actually going to put him in average. I think Derek is actually solid. I think people actually think he's a bit worse than he is, so I would say Derek is probably an average NFL QB, and I think that's a pretty fair ranking for Derek Carr. Now, next up, we have Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins is probably someone that a lot of people would just slot in the below average section, but to be honest, I'm going to actually put him in the average category. I do think Kirk is a pretty solid QB. He's obviously not great yet because he does make too many mistakes in primetime games, but Kirk is probably an average NFL quarterback. I wouldn't put him as a below average QB. I would actually put him in the average section. Now, next up is Jameis Winston, a very, very interesting quarterback heading into the 2020 season. He's going to be our backup, and honestly, for now, I think I'm going to put him in the unknown section. I know I could put him in average or maybe below average, but to be honest, I'm excited to see what he does in a couple of years, so I'm still going to put him in unknown because I think we haven't really figured out exactly what type of quarterback Jameis Winston is. He's got potential to be great, but he could be a total bust, so I think we're going to put him in unknown for now because there is still a lot to figure out about Jameis Winston, and he is a backup QB, so it's going to be hard to say whether he's going to be average, great, or borderline elite because he might not even play next year, so I'm going to put him in unknown for the time being. Now, next up, we have Dak Prescott, and I know a lot of people would probably throw Dak in the great section, but to be honest, I'm actually going to put him in the borderline elite category. Now, Dak statistically has been incredible the past couple of years. He also has to play in Dallas, and I think we have to account account for some of these intangibles that he's shown recently. He's a great leader, and he has to handle a situation where he's got tons of media attention, and if he does make a mistake, it's going to be heavily scrutinized. So I would say for those two reasons, his performance on field, as well as his ability to lead his team, I'm going to put Dak in the borderline elite category. I think he could be really great in the next couple of years. They have a great offense with tons of pieces down there in Dallas, and I could see him doing amazing in the 2020 season. Now, next up, we have Sam Darnold, and Sam, I'm going to have to throw in the unknown category. I'd say that's a pretty fair ranking for a lot of these younger quarterbacks that haven't yet proven that they're either really good or simply not good at all. I'm going to put most of them in the unknown section just because it's not fair yet to rank these QBs that could still end up being really good if they get into a better situation, or could end up being really bad if they lose a ton of weapons. Now, next up, we have Eli Manning right here, and Eli Manning obviously is retired, but if he was to play in 2020, I would probably say that he would be a below average QB. This is just for 2020. If we're going on career, Eli Manning has been great and maybe even borderline elite, but for 2020, if Eli Manning was to play, he would be below average, and I think that would be hard to debate. Of course, this is just for 2020, guys, so this isn't legacy or anything like that involved. Now, next up, we have Ryan Fitzpatrick, and as a human being, I think we all know where Fitz is going to go. Fitz is a GOAT as a human, but unfortunately, we're ranking quarterbacks here, and as a QB, Fitz is probably below average. To be honest, he's just a journeyman quarterback. There's a reason why he hasn't fit one team in his career and been able to lead them for multiple years, and that's simply because he's a little bit of a below average QB. Great story for Fitzpatrick. Love the way he plays on the field and his dedication, but unfortunately, we're going to throw him in the below average section. Now, Nick Foles right here is an interesting one. I was considering putting him in average, but I think I'm actually going to put Foles in the below average section. Now, I know he had a great run with the Eagles in the playoffs for a couple of years there, and in that time, he was elite, but right now, I think he's a below average quarterback. Like, to be honest, Foles is probably going to be a backup quarterback, and if you're a backup in the league right now, I probably am going to have to put you in the below average section. It's tough to be a backup and be average. If you are average as a backup, you should be a starter somewhere else. So Foles, for that reason, I'm going to throw him in below average. Now, next up, we have Jared Goff, and this is someone that I don't like too much. I would want to put him in below average, but I will have a little respect for him. We'll put him in the average section. I think this is a fair rating. He's definitely not great. Some people would probably consider him below average, and I don't think he's unknown because I do think that we've kind of figured out what type of quarterback Goff is. So I think we know that Goff is probably going to be an average QB, in my opinion, for likely the rest of his career. Now, next up, we have Matt Ryan, and this is actually a tough ranking for me. I didn't know whether I should put him in borderline elite or great. As a Saints fan, I don't like Matt Ryan too much, and I think because some of his inconsistencies, I'm going to put him in the great section. Matt Ryan could have an elite season, but he also could have an average season, and because of that inconsistency, I'm going to put him in grade. I think grade is a fair rating for Matt Ryan. I would really consider putting him in borderline elite, but I think we'll just leave him in the great section. Now, next up is Jimmy Garoppolo, and Jimmy Garoppolo is someone who I think gets a lot of hate, a little bit too much hate, because of the fact that the 49ers ran the ball so much in the 2020 season. I would consider putting Jimmy G in the great section. This is actually really tough for me, whether I should put him in great or elite, because I don't think he's actually at the same level as Matt Ryan is, but I do think he's a lot better than some of these average quarterbacks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put him at the top of the average category. He could easily be in the great section next year, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. But to be honest, I don't think he's as good as Matt Ryan, so that's why I don't want to put him in the great section. So I'm going to put him right at the top of average. I think he does get a little bit too much hate, to be honest with you guys. So we're putting him at the top of average. He could easily be a great QB, but I'm going to put him in average. Now, next up, we have Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco, in my opinion, is below average. Joe is a little bit washed up, and I believe he's going to be a backup heading into next season. So similar to Nick Foles, if you can't crack a starting job, it's tough for me to say you're an average QB in this league. So I'm going to put Joe Flacco in the below average section. Now, next up, we have Alex Smith. Alex Smith is actually planning on returning to football this year, and if he didn't get injured, it's such a shame that he got injured. That was such a crazy injury. I really feel bad for him. If he didn't get injured, he would probably be an average QB, but just because we don't know what he's going to do next year after this injury, I'm going to throw him in the unknown section. I know I was probably going to put a lot of the rookie QBs in this section, but because of the injury, we're putting him in unknown. We don't know if he's going to come back stronger, or if he's going to come back and not really be able to perform at the level that he used to. So I'm going to put Alex Smith in the unknown section heading into 2020. Now, next up, we have Case Keenum, and Case Keenum is very easily a below average QB. I absolutely cannot believe that we lost to Case Keenum in the playoffs in that game 3 years ago with the Minneapolis Miracle. Case Keenum got to be below average. If you can't crack a starting job in this league, I can't put you in anything above below average. Now, next up, we have Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson, I gotta throw in the elite section. I know there's a lot of people that don't love LJ and would probably put him in the borderline elite category, but after last year, how he literally dominated the NFL, I don't know how you can put him in anything other than elite. LJ, definitely gonna be elite heading into the 2020 season, was absolutely dominant last year. The only thing I worry about is if maybe he ends up regressing, if teams start to figure out how to kind of play his style, and defenses are able to adjust, because kind of similarly to how the Rams played a couple of years ago, and then they got shut down a little bit this year. It seems like teams that really spike up one year kind of start to simmer down in the next following seasons because defenses start to figure out how to play them and are able to stop them. But I think Lamar Jackson, unlike the Rams scheme, is a little bit different because he's one player, so it's kind of hard to game plan for how to stop one player, whereas you can actually put people in a certain position to stop a scheme. I think it's harder because you do need more natural talent on the field to be able to go up against Lamar Jackson, so that's why I'm going to put him in elite. I think he's definitely going to be an elite QB heading into next year. Now, Phillip Rivers is a very, very interesting one. Phillip Rivers was a great quarterback in this league for many, many years, but after last season, I think I gotta throw him in average. Now, he's kind of similar to Jimmy G. I could easily see him being great, and I could actually see him being below average next year because he was very much below average last year, but kind of similar to Jimmy Garoppolo. I think they could end up in the great category, but it's tough for me to put them in this category right now. Ben Roethlisberger honestly could also go in the average section, but I'm going to keep him in the great category. But Phillip Rivers is going to be an average QB to me. I can't really see him being much higher than that. Now, next up is Andrew Luck. I don't know why Andrew Luck always pops up on these tier lists. If he was still playing in the NFL, he would probably be elite or borderline elite, but just because he's not playing right now, I'm going to throw him in unknown. If he does come back to the league, we don't know how well he would play, so we're just going to throw him in unknown for the time being. Now, next up is Marcus Mariota, and again, same situation. If you can't crack a starting job in this league, you can't be anywhere above below average, so Mariota is going to be a below average QB to me. Now, next up is Mitchell Trubisky right here, and I think this one is an obvious ranking. We're putting him in below average. To be honest with you, if you miss passes and can't make reads in the NFL, it is tough to stay in the league for very long. This is basically his last year. If he plays well, he'll have an opportunity to start in a couple years, but if he doesn't, he's probably going to be out of the league after this year. This is his last chance. Obviously, hope the best for him, but based on what we've seen in the past, I can't see him playing too well heading into the 2020 season. Now, next up, we have Patrick Mahomes right here. Patrick Mahomes is obviously in the elite category. I think you can't debate this one at all. Mahomes, obviously the best quarterback in the NFL last year, and obviously is going to be in the elite category. Now, next up, we have Andy Dalton, and as I'm doing this list, I'm realizing that there were no rookies on it, so we're not going to be able to rank people like Tua and Joe Burrow, but Andy Dalton right here, heading into next year, again, he doesn't have a job, or he's going to be a backup, so that means he's going to be in the below average section for me. Now, next up is Russell Wilson. This one is very, very obvious as well. Right now, I would say there are 3 elite QBs in the NFL: LJ, Mahomes, and Russell Wilson. I don't think there's anyone else in this list, and I think these are the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't think you can debate that in the slightest. Now, next up, we have Aaron Rodgers, who a lot of people would consider to be elite or borderline elite, but I'm here to tell you he is simply a great quarterback. Aaron Rodgers has an incredibly inflated name value. When people think of Aaron Rodgers, they think of him as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but watch him play football the last couple of years and tell me he's an elite quarterback. I simply don't think you can do that. I know a lot of Packers fans will probably be upset with me because this is the most unconventional rating on this list. It's probably the one where I diss someone the most, but Aaron Rodgers, I am not a fan of at all. He has way too much name value. People just think, oh, Aaron Rodgers, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but like I said before, watch him play and tell me he's elite. I don't think you can do that. So Aaron Rodgers is simply a great quarterback to me. Now, next up, we have Josh Rosen, who I would consider putting in the below average section, but I'm actually going to throw him in unknown just because he is still young, kind of sticking with that same rule that we have before. I'm going to put him in the unknown section. Now, next up is Matthew Stafford, who I'd consider putting in borderline elite. He's definitely at the top of the great section, but we're throwing him in great. I feel like this is a fair rating for Matthew Stafford. I feel like he plays similarly to these quarterbacks. I know a couple Lions fans, like Fumble, might be upset with me, but I am going to put him in the great section. He could be borderline elite, but we're going to throw him in great because I just don't think he's as good as Dak right now. Now next up we have Ryan Tannehill, and Tannehill is probably going to be in a similar situation as Jimmy Garoppolo and Philip Rivers. They're at the top of this average category. They could go into the great section if they have a good year next year, but for now I'm going to keep Tannehill in average just because we really only saw him play well for about 6 games at the end of the year there. Otherwise, he was actually a backup and he didn't really have a great career before that, so Tannehill is probably going to be in the average section for me, although I do think he could be great next year. Now next up we have Tom Brady. And Tom Brady, I'm considering putting in the average section, but I do have to include some of his leadership qualities into this, because the only way I really like to involve leadership qualities in my rating is whether it simply boosts the quarterback a ton or drops them a lot. A lot of them actually don't get affected by their leadership qualities, in my opinion. But Tom Brady, because of the intangibles, I'm putting in the great section. I know I actually do want to put him in the average pretty badly, but I'm going to put him in great. I think he's a great quarterback heading into 2020. And I think this is a fair rating for Tom, to be honest with you guys. Now, next up, we have Deshaun Watson. I'm going to put Deshaun Watson in the borderline elite category. He has absolutely carried his team at the quarterback position, and he's actually only been in the league for a few years. It feels like Deshaun's been in the NFL for quite a while, but he actually hasn't. He's still a very young quarterback. I'm really excited to see what he could do in the future. I feel like the Texans aren't that poorly ran, which is really annoying for Deshaun, because he should have a lot more help around him, but he doesn't, unfortunately. So Deshaun Watson, borderline elite. I think he could easily become elite, and I think this is a really fair rating for Deshaun. Now, next up, we have Carson Wentz. This is actually a tough one. I don't know whether to put him in great or borderline elite. I think I'll put him in the borderline elite section. I don't know. This is a really tough one for me because I know a lot of people debate Carson Wentz or Dak Prescott. I think Dak's better, in my opinion. That'll probably trigger a lot of Eagles fans, and I'm going to put Carson Wentz in the great section. I'm putting Carson in the great section. Screw it. He's a great quarterback. I don't yet think he's an elite quarterback, so this is where I'm going to throw Carson Wentz. Now, next up, we have Dwayne Haskins. This is a pretty simple one for me. We're putting him in the unknown section, and the rest of these 3 quarterbacks are all going to go in the unknown section. They're all way too young for me to determine whether they're great, elite, or below average, because to be honest with you guys, I don't want to rate these 4 young quarterbacks, these 4 rookies last year, before they are able to play for a couple of seasons in the NFL to see how they do. So we're going to throw them in unknown. So as I look over these rankings, I feel like I did a pretty solid job of these. GOAT is definitely correct. The elite section I think is correct as well. Borderline elite is kind of tough for me. There's a few QBs in this grade section that I would consider pushing up there. Matt Ryan is definitely one of them, as well as Carson Wentz. Those are kind of the 2 I would consider putting in borderline elite, and maybe I drop Dak down. Then in the grade section, I think I feel decently good about the grade. I don't think there's anyone I'd move down in the grade category. Maybe Ben Roethlisberger could get moved down in the grade section. Maybe Tom Brady as well. Nah, we'd keep Tom there. And then in average, I would say these first 4 quarterbacks right here could easily boost themselves up to great and maybe even borderline elite seasons. I think Cam could have a borderline elite season just because he could be such a big game changer for you at the quarterback position. But I do feel pretty good about these bottom 2 tiers. I think these are all unknown QBs. I simply don't want to judge them yet. And then below average looks pretty good as well. So that is going to be my rankings heading into the 2020 season. Let me know if you guys do think these are accurate or inaccurate. And yeah, that's gonna do it for the video. Until next time, fellas, I'm out. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.
So,